Bayshore is a beach that used to be located down in Hampton, Virginia. Bayshore was a place that entertained thousands of people every summer, that drew the greatest entertainers from around the country. Bayshore was a beach that had the clearest water. You could actually see to the bottom. Bayshore had lifeguards, even though the story at the time was that black people could not swim. We had lifeguards, so if we couldn't swim, we still had someone to save our lives. Bayshore had everything that Virginia Beach has now. It was just not as large. Bayshore was equipped for every accommodation you could possibly want from a hotel and its beach. It had a magnificent hotel. To me, it was humongous. It was like going into the Taj Mahal to me. It was a great big hotel. You went in, you checked in. There was no elevator. You walked upstairs to get to your room. The room had double beds. I slept on a cot, 25 cents for a cot. Had a little black and white television with the knobs on top, on the little wire stand. It had a bar, had a nightclub, and they had a place for you to eat. And they served the best food. Devil crabs and scrambled eggs with country ham, and yes. So Bayshore started out as a place for Hampton Normal agricultural students before it became Hampton Institute. For students, football players and basketball players, more or less they're sports-related students, to train and convalesce after different events that they were going to do. It was also actually set up to house visiting dignitaries to the Institute at the time. So Mr. Frank D. Banks was a bookkeeper at Hampton Institute, and he was on his trip to the Chesapeake Bay one Sunday afternoon, and he noticed that, they, as usual back then, they didn't have nowhere for black people to actually go to the beach. So he figured it was about time, we need to have a place of our own. We pay taxes. We are human beings. We should have somewhere to enjoy, have a place in the sun. So he got together with a couple of other guys at Hampton, and they put together their money. I think it came to like $15,000, and what they did was they broke it up into $10 shares, and they purchased some land from a white gentleman who didn't particularly care about black people. But the guy was welcoming because he was having a rough time with his neighbors, and he wanted to get back at them, and he knew the best way to get back at them was to sell a portion of his property to some black people. That would really get under their skin. So he did. He sold them an acre. They took that acre, they turned it into a 4-room cottage with a concession stand. Because, at the time, you couldn't go to any of the pools here in Richmond. They didn't have any public pools for black people, even though black people were paying their taxes like everybody else. And you could go to the James River, but you took a chance going to the James River because you might get lynched, or anything could happen to you at the James River. So Bayshore, them opening up Bayshore and turning it into this kind of small resort was a godsend for many black people, not only in Richmond, but in Petersburg and Colonial Heights and Norfolk. And as time grew on, by the 1930s, they had a 70-room hotel. They had a shooting gallery. They had a merry-go-round, which they purchased in 1914. They had a roller coaster, and they had numerous concession stands. Even though business picked up, they had to contend with one thing: Mother Nature. In August of 1933, they had a storm called the Great King Storm. And this storm destroyed almost 75% of the hotel. In fact, the Bayshore Hotel stretched from the shoreline all the way to the very tip of the Chesapeake Bay. You could come out of your room and actually dip your foot in the water. So it destroyed all of that. And they had to rebuild. Now, the problem is we're talking about 1930s America. Now, Buckroe Beach, their neighbor, they got a substantial amount of money from the federal government to rebuild, whereas Bayshore, they only got $15,000 back. Now, what can you do with $15,000 when you've got a 70-room hotel to repair, you've got a merry-go-round, and you've got a destroyed wooden roller coaster? You can't do much. So they went and took that money and rebuilt their pavilion, which housed all their dances and cotillions. And in fact, I think Bayshore's pavilion and hotel structure were on the Chitlin Circuit. So many of the artists that you and I might have grown up watching actually visited there. And the best part was not only did they visit there and play there, they could stay there. And they could go through the front door. So they didn't have to worry about none of that. Well, you can play here, but you can't stay here. They could stay there. And they could enjoy the food there. Well, there was Ella Fitzgerald. I think she grew up in Newport News. There was Pearl Bailey, who also grew up in Newport News. There was Cab Calloway, Duke Ellington, uh, and my favorite, James Brown. In fact, I went to see James Brown in 1966 at the City Stadium. Tickets were 99 cents. Me and my mother went. And it was sponsored by a radio station that doesn't exist anymore. WANT, your favorite radio station. Oh yes, we went. We had a ball, and I was the only kid there dressed up with a suit and tie and a felt hat with a feather sticking out of it. But I enjoyed myself. Yes. Who else came to Bay Show? Martha and the Vandellas, Sam Cooke, Otis Redding. It's just too numerous to mention how many stars.
So was Buckroe Beach already in existence?
Buckroe Beach, I believe, opened in 1855, and Bay Shore didn't open until 1898. And in fact, there's a story that I found hard to believe, because when I started doing our event down in Hampton 9 years ago, I was going around to different people in Hampton asking them questions. And it was something they said that I had never noticed the whole time we went down there. There actually used to be a fence in the water to separate the races. They had a fence that ran from the shoreline all the way into the deepest end of the Chesapeake Bay, so that black people stayed on their side and white people stayed on their side. It's amazing to me that you would have a fence in the water when Bay Shore is notorious for jellyfish stinging you. Now, the jellyfish don't care what color you are, whether you're white or black. So if there's a fence in the water, it might keep the races separated, but it's not going to stop the jellyfish from stinging somebody white over there and coming right over there and stinging a black person.
But there were other black beaches as well, right?
Oh, yes. There was Seaview Beach in Norfolk. There was Sunset Lake Park in Chesapeake. Now, there was Chowin Beach, Bayou Shores, and Hargraves Beach in North Carolina. And there were a couple of other beaches. Oh, there was Log Cabin Beach in Williamsburg. And there were quite a few other beaches. In fact, we've honored quite a few of those with the Bay Shore Beach Hall of Fame plaques. And we plan on inducting every black beach that was in the United States that we can actually find into the Bay Shore Beach Hall of Fame. Because even I didn't know half of these beaches existed. Until I got further into the Bay Shore Beach story, I didn't know half of these beaches existed.
Thank you for watching. Continue to follow Virginia news and stories by subscribing to our VPM YouTube channel.